Okay, let's unpack this. We've all been there, right? Whether it's walking into a performance review or, preparing for a high-stakes client pitch or just facing that massive project deadline, there's this universal, almost magnetic pull to focus on one thing and one thing only, the result.
Hmm.
Did we win the contract? Did we hit the quarterly targets? Did we get the promotion?
That's all about the outcome.
Exactly. And that laser focus on the outcome is tempting because, well, it feels like motivation. But our source material for this deep dive suggests that getting dragged into focusing on results too much is actually the quickest, most reliable way to undermine long-term success.
And destroy team culture in the process.
Completely. So today we're taking a shortcut to being well-informed on this topic. We're going to examine the fundamental just of the tectonic difference between obsessing over the outcome and obsessing over the controllable actions, what the source brilliantly call the A factors, and their execution.
And what's so fascinating here is that the sources we've compiled, they aren't from, abstract business case studies.
Right.
They draw really deeply from the world of high-performance professional cricket environments. I mean, these are situations where the stakes are just astronomical, the media pressure is constant,
Unbelievable pressure.
selection is brutal, and careers can hang on a single performance. If you think your job review is tough, just imagine having billions of people watching you fail in real time.
It puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. So by analyzing exactly how elite teams and their leaders navigate this relentless pressure, we get a universal blueprint. It's a blueprint for leadership and team sustainability that explicitly avoids toxicity. Our mission really is to give you a framework to understand how to achieve peak performance, maintain consistency, and maybe most crucially,
Actually enjoy it.
exactly, to actually enjoy the process along the way rather than living in a constant state of fear.
That's why this is so valuable. We're translating the pressure cooker of global sport into, well, the cubicle, the classroom, or the boardroom. So we have two fundamentally opposing environments we need to define right away because the difference in the air, the vibe. It's immediate. You can almost feel the psychological tension lift or just solidify when you walk into one versus the other.
You really can.
First, we have the result-focused environment. Their primary focus is purely on outcomes, on winning, and on constantly reinforcing the perceived importance and the magnitude of the game or the task itself.
Everything is about the scoreboard.
Everything. They talk about the consequence of not winning.
And this is where we need to get into the specific terminology from the source material because it's so clarifying. In that result-focused environment, all the energy is directed at what are called the B factors.
The uncontrollables.
The uncontrollables, precisely. These are all the things you wish you could control, but you just can't. The final score, the opposition's brilliance, whether the boss likes your presentation,
The umpire's decision, the weather.
all of it. And when you focus on B factors, you absolutely guarantee anxiety because the outcome is never, ever guaranteed.
Which brings us to the superior path, doesn't it? The process-driven environment. The primary focus here is completely different. It's the execution, the repeatable actions, the consistency.
And crucially, they focus entirely on controlling those A factors.
The controllables.
The A factors are the things you can control. Your preparation quality, your effort level, your commitment to training, visualization of success, and the specific execution of fundamental skills.
So, like, if you're a bowler, it's about hitting your landing spot consistently.
Yes. Or if you're a salesperson, it's sticking to your proven sales script structure. And this focus, it goes so far beyond just semantics. It dictates the entire mental framework of the team.
How so?
Well, in a result-focused environment, the framework is built on scarcity and consequence. If you don't win, you're out. But in a process-driven environment, the framework is built on consistency, refinement, and critically psychological safety.
And that distinction is everything.
It's the core divider between temporary, anxiety-fueled success and genuine, sustainable, long-term performance.
So let's start with the dark side then, the toxic trap. If we're going to examine the result-focused environment, it seems the infection always starts at the very top, with the leadership messaging.
Always.
It's not just discouraging, it's what our source calls the language of fear. It's constantly weaponizing consequences and scarcity to create this artificial intensity.
Right. And the intention, the leaders will say the intention is to lock people in by raising the stakes.
Yeah.
But the cost of doing that is just immense.
Well, the source material is full of these specific anxiety-inducing messages that players hear, and you can translate them directly to any corporate culture.
Oh, easily.
Leaders emphasize imminent consequences. If we lose this game, we are out of the tournament.
Which translates to, if we don't hit these targets this quarter, there will be layoffs. Same thing.
And the message links selection or job security directly to immediate performance. They lay down the gauntlet. If you don't perform, you will get dropped.
It's a direct threat.
And maybe the most destructive one, they create this brutal internal competition and insecurity by messaging that spots are up for grabs in the game.
And think of that in a project context. Only the top 3 performers this quarter will get the bonus, or the chance to lead the next big project. It pits everyone against each other.
So if we connect this to the psychological architecture, this language is really designed to manufacture intensity through threat, isn't it?
It is. And the source acknowledges that fear of failure can drive individuals to lock in for one very important game. That quick burst of adrenaline-fueled focus. That is the short-term benefit the toxic leader is chasing.
But that's the fatal flaw, right? It's completely unsustainable.
It's the fatal unsustainable flaw. You've just triggered the limbic system, the fight-or-flight response, not the high-functioning creative part of the brain. The team cannot sustain that hyper-alert state indefinitely.
So what happens?
The source is crystal clear. This environment is not sustainable at all because stress and anxiety don't just dissipate with the final whistle. They accumulate.
They build up.
They cause neural burnout. When a player constantly hears their job is on the line, their brain starts allocating cognitive resources to self-preservation, not to optimal performance. The stress just builds and builds until you reach a point where the whole team eventually implodes.
An implosion.
Yeah.
Losing creative ability, losing trust.
All of it.
And when you are living under that kind of linguistic threat, the internal monologue of the individual player must immediately become fear-driven and self-protective.
Oh, absolutely. It becomes a focus on the B factors, the uncontrollables that you now desperately need to avoid.
So you can just imagine being the player walking out onto the field or the junior exec heading into that big meeting with these thoughts just swirling in your head.
Yeah.
Don't lose this account, or I really need to score points today. The mental checklist is defined entirely by negatives, which is a cognitive inhibitor.
Don't get out. Don't bowl badly. Don't stuff up, otherwise I might be gone.
And what happens when you tell your brain don't?
You immediately focus on the thing you're trying to avoid, making it more likely to happen. It's a classic psychological trap.
This overwhelming focus on the result and, critically, the fear of failure, is what immediately attacks a player's confidence and consistency.
And when you are terrified of making a mistake, your play becomes risk-averse, hesitant, predictable. You are no longer innovating or playing intuitively.
We're just playing defensively.
They're playing to survive.
Yeah.
And that is the exact opposite of the creative, proactive high performance that's required for long-term success.
I have to push back here slightly, though. In a massive knockout game, or when a company is genuinely facing bankruptcy, isn't that fear the only thing that gives a team that required desperation? Can you really afford to ignore the score when millions are on the line?
That's a crucial question, and it's a fair one, because leaders who use fear often justify it in exactly that way. But the source shows us the long-term trade-off. Even if that fear gives you a 1% chance of winning this one game through sheer adrenaline, it simultaneously guarantees a 99% chance that you will lose the next 5 games because you've crippled your team's psychological capability.
So the long-term impact isn't just a dip in performance.
No, it's a wholesale collapse of the internal team dynamics. The source describes these telltale signs of team breakdown. First, the environment becomes, and this is a direct quote, incredibly toxic.
And second?
The dynamic shifts entirely to an every-person-for-themselves mentality. The team purpose just vanishes into thin air.
That's the mechanism of toxicity, isn't it? When selection is threatened, cooperation becomes illogical. Why would I help you if we're competing for the same spot?
Precisely. Players stop focusing on collective success, setting up the team to win, and they start playing solely for their individual spots.
So they're just trying to do enough.
They seek only to do enough, just enough to ensure their selection for the next game. A batsman might refuse to take a quick, risky run that helps the team total because his priority is staying in and getting to a personal milestone.
They prioritize their own survival over the team's needs.
And the collective purpose is lost. And the most heartbreaking outcome described in the source, the enjoyment factor of playing the game you love, completely evaporates.
And that joy. The source says that's not frivolous, is it?
Not at all. It points out that it's the secret sauce and a very important undercurrent to all successful team environments. Lose that, and you've lost everything.
Okay, let's turn away from the paralysis of fear and look at the alternative, the championship mindset that leads to sustainable success. Contrast the destructive language we just discussed with the messaging you find in successful environments.
The contrast is, it's radical. In process-driven groups, the leadership fundamentally trusts the talent they've assembled. Their message is simple, and it's empowering.
So what do they say?
Leaders ask players to just bring the best version of themselves every time, and importantly, to do it consistently, over and over again. The message is simple. If we all execute our specific roles perfectly, the result will take care of itself.
It's an empowering statement built on faith, isn't it? Not a threatening one built on skepticism.
Exactly.
And this connection to a championship mindset is key. We should be clear. It's not about ignoring winning.
No, not at all.
It's about understanding that winning is a byproduct of consistency and excellent execution, not the goal itself. The goal is perfect execution of the A factors.
That's it. When every individual consistently brings their best self, executing their role without mental distraction, the team naturally maximizes its chance of success. This systematic focus effectively removes anxiety and stress from pressurized situations.
How does it do that?
Because the players know that as long as they focus on their A factors, the things they can actually control, they have done their job. They have psychological protection. The result is just the score, a reflection of the process, but it's not the defining judgment of the player's worth or their security.
This is where it gets really interesting, diving into specific, powerful leadership examples. Our source highlights Ricky Ponting, one of the most successful captains in cricket history. I was genuinely shocked to read that even legends like Ponting actively avoided talking about winning. What exactly was his mantra?
Ponting was an absolute master of cognitive redirection. He consistently focused the team's mind away from the massive pressure of, say, a World Cup final and onto the minute details of execution. His famous mantra was that the team whose individuals do the basics better and for longer will be the team that will come out on top.
Okay, analyze the power of that exact phrasing for us. Better and for longer.
It's genius in its simplicity because it achieves a crucial mental redirection. It completely shifts mental energy away from the uncontrollable B factor winning and onto the controllable A factor.
Which is doing the basics.
Doing the basics better than the competition and, crucially, maintaining that execution for longer. Think about that for a second. You cannot control what the opposition does, or if the umpire makes a bad call, or if the weather shifts.
Right.
But you can control how well you execute your specific fundamentals, your preparation, and your mental resilience to maintain it for the duration of the task. By making the process the definition of success, Ponting gave his players a target they could always hit, reducing mental clutter and fear.
And we see this philosophy perfectly encapsulated in the high-pressure world of the IPL, the Indian Premier League. I mean, that is arguably the most financially intense and cutthroat T20 competition on the planet.
Absolutely. And the source uses two fantastic examples, the Rajasthan Royals and the Chennai Super Kings, or CSK.
So tell us about them.
Well, Paddy Upton, who worked with the Rajasthan Royals, specifically built an environment designed to take all of the anxiety and stress out of that pressurized tournament. He created structures like team meetings that focused only on learning and execution, never on the outcome, to reinforce that psychological safety.
And then there's the Chennai Super Kings under the legendary captain MS Dhoni and coach Stephen Fleming. They were absolute masters of this.
They're known as one of the most consistently successful franchises for a reason. And the crucial detail here is in the deliberate omission.
What they didn't say.
What they didn't say. The source explicitly states that neither Dhoni nor Fleming was ever heard saying, "We need to win this game today," in their team talk. Their focus remained entirely on execution.
And they weren't threatening selection either.
Never. They were never heard saying things like, "If you don't score runs today or take wickets, you will be getting dropped." This deliberate, consistent omission of results-focused communication is the key component that ensures the environment remains process-driven and safe.
Because they understood something fundamental.
They understood that the mere threat of being dropped is enough to paralyze a player's natural instinct and confidence.
Yeah.
It turns an innovator into a conservative risk avoider. They just trusted the process to deliver the results.
This distinction in leadership messaging, it naturally leads us to selection strategy. And this is where the fear-based environments do their most direct, measurable damage. If the language is fear, the selection strategy is its enforcement arm.
That's a great way to put it.
In results-focused environments, the selection strategy is defined by constant reactive chopping and changing of players. Individuals are replaced immediately if they underperform for a couple of games.
There's no grace period.
None. No faith. Just a relentless panicked hunt for the next person who can deliver an immediate B factor, a winning result.
And the psychological impact of this strategy, it just cannot be overstated. When selectors or managers in a corporate setting signal that a player wasn't good enough after just one or two failures or one bad quarterly report and replace him immediately,
It sends a message to everyone else.
it forces every other player to constantly be looking over their shoulders.
Yeah.
And this creates a debilitating cycle of fear and insecurity that just poisons the water for the whole team.
Think about the cognitive load.
It's huge. If I'm worried about keeping my spot, I cannot give 100% of my mental capacity to the task at hand. Instead of focusing on hitting the perfect length, which is an A factor, I'm worried about my coach's reaction if I get hit for a boundary A B factor.
And a team where everyone is constantly worried about their job security.
Is a team that cannot innovate, cannot take necessary strategic risks, and ultimately cannot perform consistently because mental resources are being diverted to survival.
The source material offers such a powerful personal counterpoint to this turbulent approach, sharing the experience from the speaker's second year with CSK. After being in these environments defined by constant churn,
Right.
the speaker notes there was no chopping and changing in selection. They specifically contrast this with other teams the speaker had been with, where players were turned over constantly, and that stability was a profound realization for them.
That stability is the essence of the process-driven selection model. It fosters trust, and trust is absolutely essential for building collective cohesion and achieving long-term consistency.
So what message does stability send?
Selection stability says, loud and clear, we picked you because we trust your process, and we are going to give you the space to fail while you find your best form.
It provides that psychological safety.
Exactly. It provides players with the psychological safety needed to pick their best consistent effort, rather than playing conservatively, just hitting singles instead of aiming for boundaries, or just doing the minimum viable product instead of innovating,
Just to survive.
only to ensure they survive long enough to be selected for the next game. When you remove the focus on survival, the focus shifts back entirely to maximizing execution quality, which, ironically, is the only way to achieve sustainable results.
So stability isn't a passive thing. It's an active, difficult choice by leadership.
It is.
They have to absorb short-term pressure from fans or stakeholders in order to protect the long-term mental health and performance capacity of the team.
Exactly. It's completely counterintuitive to the impatient world we live in, but it's the only way sustainable high performance is achieved. Stability creates the space for mastery.
What's so sobering about this deep dive is realizing that even elite, world-class athletes, players at the very top of their game, can be completely victimized by a negative environment.
That's true.
The source speaker recounts a personal experience following the retirement of legends Ricky Ponting and Mike Hussey, where the entire Australian team structure drifted significantly. The cultural compass was just lost.
And this change in environment, this shift from that process-driven leadership under Ponting to more chaotic, results-focused structure had a devastating personal result. The source speaker notes that the pressure began to affect consistency and confidence.
Players, including the speaker, began to look over our shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
The speaker's own performances, despite being in their prime years, went downhill because they were overwhelmed by a need for results and the fear of failure.
And they admitted that at that point, they didn't yet have the internal mental skills or the knowledge to redirect their thoughts away from the fear. They were just stuck focusing on B factors, the uncontrollables.
Here's the most definitive evidence for me that the environment, not the talent, is the determining factor.
This is the key point.
The performance tanking happened despite the speaker simultaneously performing really well in the enjoyable, process-driven IPL environment during the off-season.
So as soon as they returned to the results-focused Australian structure, the source actually calls it their kryptonite, the performances started to tank again, and the enjoyment factor just evaporated very quickly.
So this anecdote proves it. Even the most abundant talent will be undermined and rendered inconsistent if the leadership creates an unsustainable, fear-based structure.
The fear creates a cognitive interference pattern. It makes it impossible to access your learned skills when you're under pressure.
Then we get to this critical pivot point, which is a fantastic lesson in individual agency, the T20 World Cup in 2016.
Right.
The source describes this as another peak example of a toxic environment. The leadership, the coach, the captain, the selectors, they were messaging aggressively, using maximum threat.
Just piling on the pressure.
The conversations were full of warnings like all spots are up for grabs if you want to play in the T20 World Cup, and you might only have one opportunity to press your claim.
I mean, that's the ultimate manufactured intensity, designed to force performance.
But the speaker's response here provides this profound, actionable lesson in individual resilience, even when the culture around you is actively poisoning your mind.
What do they do?
As soon as they heard this fear-based messaging, they made a conscious mental pivot. They immediately acknowledged the ridiculous situation, the absurdity of being threatened in their own mind, and made the decision to opt out of the negative messaging.
And this opt-out, it wasn't just walking away, was it?
No.
It meant actively using mental skills to redirect focus away from the threats and the B factors, the consequences, back onto preparation and the A factors, the things they could control.
It's conscious compartmentalization and cognitive redirection.
Right. They ask themselves, what can I control right now? My breathing, my preparation, my visualization of hitting my run-up mark perfectly.
But how hard is that, really? When you know that one bad performance might end your career, is it psychologically possible to truly ignore that threat? Isn't focusing on the A factors just a clever distraction from the harsh reality?
It is exceptionally difficult, but that's the core skill of high performance. Mental toughness. You don't ignore the threat entirely. You acknowledge it, and then you deliberately deprioritize it. You treat the threat as irrelevant data.
So you build a cocoon?
The source describes it as building that super strong cocoon around oneself. It's a commitment to protecting your own optimal mental environment, realizing that if you allow the fear in, you guarantee underperformance. The alternative, performing optimally despite the pressure, is far superior.
And the ultimate validation of this mental strategy is the outcome for the individual player.
That happened.
After opting out of the fear and committing entirely to the process, the speaker subsequently, bold as well as I had, played one of the games of my life at the SCG as captain.
Wow.
And retired at the end of that T20 World Cup as the #1 T20I all-rounder in the world.
That's incredible. It just proves that internal process focus can triumph over even the most hostile external fear environment.
Exactly. And let's connect that personal triumph to the team outcome. The fear-driven Australian team ultimately lost the quarterfinal knockout game to India. They left runs on the table and failed to execute under pressure.
It did crumble.
They crumbled. And the contrast with India is stark and telling. India, the winning team, had barely changed their XI from the beginning of the series 3 months prior.
So that stability, that consistency, it's a clear, undeniable sign of selection stability and process focus delivering results when it matters most.
Right. Whereas anxiety and constant competition crumbled under the decisive pressure cooker of the knockout stage.
Stability and process beat anxiety and turbulence every single time in the long run.
And what's crucial to understand is that this dynamic, this relationship between fear, process, and performance is universal. It's not just about millionaire athletes in stadiums.
Yeah.
It applies everywhere, including, and this is heartbreaking, in junior sport. The source gives a perfect cautionary tale involving a game of junior cricket where a spot in the grand final was riding on the result.
And this is perhaps the most illustrative example of the inherent danger of result fixation. Because the stakes were supposedly low, yet the psychological damage was high.
So what happened?
The scenario details how the parents, acting as the leaders and the cultural architects, really built this game up, stressing how important it was to win.
So the same error in messaging we saw in the toxic professional environments.
Exactly the same. And then came the moment of failure. One of the calmest kids in the team went out to bat. And what did a result-focused parent say to him as he walked out, loading the moment with B factors?
Oh, no.
The parent said, "Don't get out, otherwise we will lose."
Wow. That's just a devastating example of leadership failure at the amateur level. It's a complete misunderstanding of how to create an optimal performance state.
And the result? That poor young kid, burdened with the responsibility of the entire team's success, he ended up getting out. And because of all the buildup of importance, the calmest child on the field lost the plot.
He lost it.
Threw his gear everywhere in disappointment because he felt he'd personally let the entire team down. And that emotional collapse was a direct and tragic result of the parents not understanding the fundamentals.
They turned a game into a catastrophic failure of self-worth.
Instead of focusing on technique or preparation or effort, the A factors, they loaded the outcome with this crushing psychological weight.
Which brings us back to the individual's resilience, especially when you are stuck in a toxic work or school or sports environment where the leaders are failing you. The source says it is so easy to allow the live or die by results environment to infiltrate your mindset and start to corrupt it.
Right.
So the source argues that individuals must be mentally tough enough to proactively build that super strong cocoon around themselves.
And that cocoon is essential for self-preservation. It's a defense mechanism for when the leadership around you fails. And we can get specific about what building that cocoon actually looks like in practice for our listeners. It's not just wishful thinking, it's a mental skill.
Okay, so detail the action. What specific steps does one take to redirect focus when the external environment is screaming threats?
The action is using mental skills for constant self-governance. It means continually directing your thoughts toward creating your own optimal mental environment. First, you have to acknowledge the negative, results-focused messaging. You hear the noise.
You don't pretend it's not there.
You don't. But then you immediately and deliberately redirect that mental energy straight back to bringing the best version of yourself and focusing only on the A factors, regardless of the external pressure.
So practically, what might that look like?
Practically, this might involve using physical cues. Maybe you tap your watch or take 3 deep, mindful breaths before a high-stress moment. It's an instant mental reset that interrupts the fear spiral.
I like that.
Or you could write down your top 3 A factors for the meeting, the only 3 things you will focus on before you even step into the room. You recognize the external threat, but you refuse to let it infiltrate your high-performance mindset. That is the definition of mental toughness in this context.
This puts a huge mandate back on the leaders, though, doesn't it? Because relying on every individual to build their own internal cocoon is exhausting.
It is.
And the source advocates that we need to create environments so good that individuals don't have to feel like they are rebelling against the team leadership just to stay process-driven.
Absolutely. The responsibility for psychological safety ultimately lies with the leader. And a key part of that process-driven leadership is advocating for greater autonomy.
So letting people manage their own prep?
Yes. Teams should be more open to allowing players or employees to manage their own mental and physical preparation. The realization is that everyone is different.
Right. One size doesn't fit all?
Not at all. One player might need an intense pregame routine, while another needs complete quiet and a slow warm-up. Preparation should often be individualized. When leaders trust their team members enough to allow for that, they're sending a powerful message.
What's the message?
That they trust the individual's dedication to their A factors, rather than trying to micromanage the B factors.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is about respect, trust, and ultimately longevity.
It is. The ultimate goal of understanding this path is threefold. It creates more high-performing individuals, more high-performing teams, and most importantly, it results in much more enjoyable team environments.
And that enjoyment and fun, that's the non-negotiable foundation.
It is. It ensures that the fun and joy are never lost. When work or performance is consistently enjoyable, people don't burn out, and success becomes sustainable.
Okay, so let's wrap this up.
To quickly summarize the core findings of this deep dive, leaders hold immense, immediate power to create either the highest performing or the most destructive team environment.
It's their choice.
Building up results and threatening selection creates stress and a toxic every person for themselves mentality that is unsustainable and ultimately undermines talent.
And the alternative.
Conversely, the championship mindset is achieved by focusing leadership on the process, demanding consistency, and encouraging individuals to bring the best version of themselves, their A factors. This creates a high-performing environment that is also inherently fun and resilient.
So stability and focus on the controllables.
Stability in selection and a relentless focus on those controllable A factors are the non-negotiable foundations for sustainable excellence.
So we'll leave you with this provocative thought, something to take with you and apply immediately, whether you're managing a team or just managing your own focus. If successful team environments always have a fun and enjoyable aspect as a non-negotiable foundation, what is one small controllable factor related to enjoyment or individual mental preparation that you can consciously focus on tomorrow?
So something you can control.
Something you can control. Maybe listening to a specific song before your next tough meeting, or setting aside the first 5 minutes of your workday for pure focus without checking email. Find your cocoon, focus on your A factors, and let the results be the pleasant surprise, not the paralyzing master.